Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday, August 17th, 2011, and this is Day 9 Daily number 340, where we learn to be a better gamer. We're going to begin the daily with a story that's going to end in me apologizing to you, because I messed up. But the story is there to make you feel bad for me. Alright, notice how good of a build order that is. So, it all begins last week when I was telling everyone that we're going to relaunch Newbie Tuesday because there's been so many things getting in the way of that, which stinks, that we are just going to come back to it. And we're going to do a full week of analysis of your games. Oh, how awesome that was going to be. I was really excited to do that, had all the scheduling set up. But then I got in a go-kart accident, which I'm on these amazing painkillers for. They're really cool, so there's going to be some amazing experience in the daily, because my foot hurts badly. But let me just describe what happened yesterday. What happened is Blip TV is doing this great series called Endless Summer. And for any of you who don't know, Blip TV is where I host all my archives. I mean, it's on YouTube and other things as well, but Blip is like the home. day9tv.blip.tv for any of you who want to go check it out. They're doing this great series called Endless Summer where they go to the web producers on their site and interview them. So you can get a chance to learn about other cool, unique, original web-only series and the producers behind them. So they came to my house, they took this room apart and set all these cameras up. I felt all important, you know. They even brought in bagels with cream cheese so the crew could have stuff to eat. And I was just like, yeah, this is totally awesome. I felt horrible because I told my roommates that the Blip TV crew was going to be in here, but I didn't know that there was going to be 10 to 12 people there. So my whole house was filled up. One of my roommates is coming out at 8:30 in the morning in just boxers, going to the bathroom. Everyone's like, "Good morning, would you like some trail mix?" And they're just just cowering away back into the bathroom. So we did the whole interview thing, and part of the Endless Summer is to do something that I would not normally do. To take the web producer and to pull them out of their familiar environment. So they were like, "Let's go swimming." And I was like, "No, I have this body hair problem that, let's actually not go swimming. Or let's not go surfing. Let's not do any surfing." I think I may have said swimming at first. Whatever. So then they said, "What about go-kart racing?" And I was like, "Let's do it." So we go to a high-speed go-kart course. And I learned really quickly, as I'm driving around, that if you hit walls and hit other cars, nothing happens. It's like a really bumpy, or really bump-proof surrounder thing. What is it called? I don't know. It's a bumper, I guess. It's this really, really resilient plastic shell. You're supposed to bump into each other. You're supposed to, jostle for a position and, bump into walls and bump into other people. So I was like, yeah! So I floor it, because I'm just, turning, being gung, 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 all along the wall. I don't care. I'm going 40 miles an hour, right? It's awesome. So it's the long stretch, right? It's like the home stretch thing. And I'm trying to turn around the corner. And Paula, who's the host, I'm trying to pull around her from the outside. So as I'm turning, she pushes me from this side, so it re-straightens my car back out, and I run straight into the wall with the weight of her car behind me, and I just blast right through the wall. So here's my foot pedal right here. So the wall pops up over the front bumper, and then goes back on my foot. So for any of you who would like to understand what it was like, let me actually come back here and show you a photo of my foot. Here we go. As we go to the screen. Yeah, there it is. Here's my foot. You'll notice, well, that's weird. This bulge isn't supposed to be here. You see that? And here it is. I was literally tweeting, right after I got, incredible. My foot hurts so bad. You can see how it's kind of, purple, and it's kind of scratched there. This is pretty awesome. What's that bump doing there? So that was really good. So so we went to the hospital, and amazingly, nothing was broken. But I also can't walk, right? So I have one of these things on. Yeah, day 9 be hobbling. And look at this. Look at the steel rebar. This is what I broke through, right? This is what supports the wall. And and it literally just went choink and popped right out. And this is I don't know if you can actually get a sense of how hard this is or how heavy this is. This is hard for me to lift, but I blasted right through that wall. I have a souvenir. I'm going to hang it up. And if there's ever a zombie apocalypse, I can now defend myself. And this will become my totem, my item that you can always identify me with. Set that sucker back down. So that brings us to right now. The apology is that there will actually be a series of days with no daily on them. Getting in a giant go-karting accident and having everything get rearranged unfortunately ended up interrupting the schedule. I'm doing the After Hours Gaming League tonight. the semifinals of Google versus Zynga, and the winner of that goes on to face Microsoft this Friday in Palo Alto at the Facebook headquarters. So I'm really excited about that. But unfortunately, given the condition of my foot, I actually have to head up there via a different method of transport. So I won't be here on Thursday night or Sunday or Monday. There's going to be many a day of no Day 9. So I'm sorry. But of course, if you tune into the day9.tv, you can watch the Facebook Live stuff, the Facebook finals. It's going to be awesome. Also, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, though, next week is going to be all user-submitted stuff. All user-submitted everything, which brings us to today, which is Newbie Tuesday, where we are going to be analyzing some of your replays. What I requested for today was gold-level stuff, and I've been doing a lot of pontificating about it. So let me just, before I go into that whole lecture, that whole rant, I wanted to once again say, no daily tomorrow, Sunday, or Monday, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is going to be the official reignition of Newbie Tuesday. And today is going to be a little bit of the start of that. So, and come to MLG, because I'm there in MLG Raleigh after that. Yeah. And by the way, for any of you trying to notify me that it's Wednesday, I know. I was originally going to do this yesterday, but I was in a hospital. So, let's talk about gold-ish level play, right? When you are, bronze and silver, a lot of times it's quite clear what you need to do to step forward. A lot of times you're just like, yeah, I actually just didn't build any units for 10 minutes. Or, I'm making all the wrong units, etc., etc. But I feel that once you start to get to the high silver and low gold, there comes this point where you really need to have a little bit more direction in how you're starting to learn and how you're starting to set yourself up. And someone actually asked me, what the biggest difference between a gold level player, a diamond level player, and like super top pros. And the answer, in my eyes, is multitasking, right? Big struggle with multitasking, makes itself known in many, many ways. Part of me wanted to say something like macro. It's the ability to constantly make stuff. You need to work on that. Or, oh, you're losing focus on your units. You need to work on your unit control. All these sorts of things you'll hear me say again and again and again. But the core problem is multitasking ability. That there might be 5 things you need to do, like building worker, like building probes, building pylons, building more units, continuing to tech up, and scouting with a worker. There might be these 5 things, but if you're an inexperienced player, you might only be able to hold 3 of those in at the same time. Building probes, building pylons, building units, but you might forget to build the next tech structure or lose track of your army as it's floating through the middle of the map. So what we're going to do is take a look at some games and try to note where a deficiency ended up happening. But what we want to also do is relate it back to this idea of multitasking and prioritizing in multitasking. Because it's very easy. Let's say you just have 3 things you need to do. Just 3 things. Building probes, building pylons, attacking. Let's say these are the only 3 that you ever need to do at this point in the game. Often people prioritize the attack and looking at the attack and all this stuff. But with these other 2 things, the question is, do I want to have building probes be first or building pylons be first? Okay, well, let me actually reprioritize it. So it's building probes, building pylons, and then watching the attack. So what I'm going to start to try to do is point out the way that you should pull a task to the top of the list and really work on it in these games. So as we come over to the main game, this is in the middle of a big match between our hero, Urk, and his enemy, Zixer. And I'm going to put out the official request for next week's Newbie Tuesday at the end of this, at the end of part 1. But first, I want to note that the position we find ourselves in from Urk, which can happen oh so frequently, right? These are 2 gold level players. Urk is trying to prevent Zixer from taking the gold. Urk's been doing some defense early on. You'll notice that I actually didn't go to the start of the game. I actually popped up in the middle here. Because the interesting thing is that you don't actually need to know what went on at the start of this game to get a sense of what the game state is. You have a Zerg who's looking really good against a Terran who's just gotten a gold up. We're going to ignore the money in the bank. We're going to ignore what happened in the opening. Because you know what? An interesting question is, did we lose any workers at the start of the game? Did we mess up in our opening? Did our opponent do some harassment early? Did we do some harassment? We don't care. I literally just entered this game. So now I have a pure analysis stance. it's such a huge mistake to look at this phase of the game and to be caught up like, oh, but he did do that Hellion harass at the start of the game. No. We want to just look from a pure standpoint as to what was going on at this point in the game, and we see total shattering domination by Zixer as he kills off his base. There's a couple of Thors that are wandering out. We have oh so much, and suddenly we see that Urk is nearly doubling Zixer's supply. Nearly doubling it. Now getting the +2 upgrades at the evolution chamber. Queens are continuing to add larvae. We have a hive nearing completion. We're defended at the back. I mean, oh my god, everything's so good. We even have corruptors coming out. We have 48 Zerglings in production. As this hive's going to finish, we're going to get ready to take a greater spire. We have this other base operational. We might want to try to put a little bit of defense there. That's probably the biggest weak point here. But you know what? Zixer is effed in the A, man. This guy is so dead, man. And this is a moment that I think requires many of an analysis. So, what did I say at the start of the game? The biggest problem that many low-level players have, and in fact one of the biggest problems that pervades throughout all of StarCraft 2 space, is multitasking and not having the right things pop over to the top of the list. Interestingly, I'm going to tell you right now that Zerg loses this game. How shocking, right? How shocking. To look at this game state, and we want to come back and just move around, Zerg loses this game. Zerg is going to die in a moment, with the Terran basically completely mined out in the unit counting station with like no units and Zerg having like maximum units. Zerg actually ends up losing this game. And it comes back to this idea of how he prioritized in his whole queue of multitasking. How he prioritized all those tasks that he had to do. And why did I start in the middle of this game? So we had that pure vision sense where we can look at this and say, aha, I see very much so that he was ahead. So when we pop back into the game, what I'm going to state right now is as we watch Urk, you're going to start to see him rebuilding stuff, getting into a good position. As I move up to time 4, some of you might experience lag, and I don't care about that, right? We see him always checking expansions. This is great. This is all good. I mean, obviously his APM is not, lightning fast, so as we come back, we see him, though, doing some good stuff. He's continuing to add on larva to these. He's continuing to macro. He's teching. He's getting that up. And, you see he's coming over to get these Mutalisks up, trying to do a little bit of harassment. Manages to succeed in doing some damage. We see the Broodlords getting morphed in. And another big attack comes in from the Terran player. So here's a moment in time where we can ask ourselves, what's everything I need to do right now? The constant things you need to do. Add more larvae, add more larvae, add more larvae. Other constant things you need to do. Spread more creep, okay? Other constant things you need to do. Continue to build units. Other constant things. What are some specific things we have to deal with right now? Some moment specifics. Deal with this attack? I don't know. Gee, that seems pretty clear, right? Maybe we should deal with this attack! But another thing that we also need to do is harass our opponent. Should that be pretty high up on our list? Well, I think many of you would say, no, that's not high up on our list because this attack is huge. I think that's a very reasonable thing to say. What about managing expansions? Oh, that actually is something that you should always have as the #1 priority in your late game setting. Because let me tell you something. This attack can mean tons of different things. Can mean so many different things. Is this an all-in attack? Well, that depends if he's trying to expand here or not. That depends if this is up or not. If this is operational and Terran's trying to get this, then this is a regular old standard-esque attack. If there's no base up here and there's no base over here, and in fact, even if we come over here and see that there's nothing mining, then this is an all-in attack. This can have a lot of different flavors to it. And what we're going to see occur in this attack is that very smartly, we see the Zerg player wait a little while before engaging with his Ling Baneling. Overruns this attack, no problem at all. Doesn't quite have those corruptors there together. The Mutalisks start to slowly float back to try to become part of the party. We see Zixer essentially holding, Eric essentially holding against Zixer. and everything seems okay. I mean, the lead is not tremendous by Urk anymore, but it's still, you know, a great lead. His money's low, he has good upgrades, and our Terran player is effectively boned. But this is an interesting moment that happens in gameplay, because a lot of the constants start to take priority. Adding larvae. You see the larvae getting added? The battle is just finished. Oh, my focus, it's back again. As I go back to my mental checklist, yeah, I need to get these hatches with their larvae in there. Protoss players will suddenly realize that their warp gates have not been doing anything. They'll start to do those. Terran players might realize, oh my god, and start spamming units out of all their unit-producing structures, and maybe even realize, hey, I can begin to get some upgrades in because I suddenly realize that I have a lot of money. But I want to just state right now, and the reason we looked at the second half of this game between Urk and Zixer, he should be prioritizing scouting all around the map in the late game. Because watch as I ×4 the remainder of this game, look at what happens on the mini-map for our guy Urk, right? He's adding on the larva, he's taking an expand of his own. Look at the vision on the mini-map. No vision in between the bases to try to find if there's any drops coming. This attack doesn't quite go so well, but you know, it ends up going reasonably well. But look at the mini-map. I'm not caring about this battle so much. Look at that mini-map. Some of our constants are going to be taking some priority. Building units. We see units getting built. Our money's quite low. Look at the mini-map. Now, I'm actually going to hit E. Oh my god, look at this. Terran actually has 2 whole bases up there. Wow, what do you know? So suddenly the attacks that were happening earlier that were all in nature, and we should have been able to close out a win, Terran is now winning because we've misprioritized. We've misprioritized scouting all around the minimap. Now this is, what I'm going to say, is very different than forgetfulness. Many people will look at this game and say, oh, Urk just forgot to check this top and forgot to check this left. It didn't end up happening, but it's less to do with forgetfulness and more to do with the fact that there is so much in your brain that you have to pop something off. You have to actually not think about 50 things at once, because your brain can't do that. It can only think about 7 at once. And the scouting all around the map happened to not be one of those. So what I would say, though, is that on the next game, you always have a task that you're trying to complete, right? You're always trying to say to yourself, yeah, I'm going to try to have better macro, I'm going to try to do this, I'm going to try to do that. What I want you to do for next week and when you submit these games is to identify problems that you have and push the priority of that problem to the top of the queue. And then only work on that. You hear me say a lot of things like work on your macro, work on this, work on, blah, blah, blah. But what I want you to do is actually put like a little sticky note on your monitor that says, all right, I watched 3 of my games and I noticed that I always forget to macro in the late game. And show times in the game where there's a battle going on or when there's other bases to be checked. And what you're seeing is, no, in my main, I'm only macroing. I'm only macroing. Because the funny thing is that these pros are really, really good at multitasking, right? They're extremely, extremely good at multitasking. But it's not just, oh yeah, I can keep a lot of things in my brain at once. They got good at macro, and then that was something that could stand on its own once that little pillar was established. And then, oh yeah, I scouted all the expansions, and that's another little pillar that's been established on its own that now I can actually focus on. So in this game, in Urk's case, you know what? At the start of the game, that I completely never even showed in the slightest, there were problems with forgetting some larva injects, with moving stuff to the front. But you know what? The only thing we're going to decide for Urk to do for the next game is to just scout those bases aggressively in the late game, put that to the top of his queue. And actually, in my competitive experience, that bumped to the top of my queue early on in terms of my mental checklist, and it has actually almost never been pulled down. Macroing is like right up there. It's like check for expansions, make sure you're macroing. These are like my top 2 that I always do. But notice that this is subtly different from saying don't forget to scout. Because in any RTS games, you'll regularly hit spots where there are 15 things to do. To make it simple, let's say you need to build units, you need to scout for expansions, you need to manage that battle. You might remember all of them, and now the question is about ordering. Make sure in your submissions and in your practice that you know what one is always going to be prioritized first. You heard me say when this big battle happened that my gut instinct is, well, I need to check for expansions to know how to treat this battle. And the funny thing about all this is that this army is what killed Urk in the end. And when Urk submitted this game, he said, I lost when there were too many Thors. This is what happened in the last 5 minutes of the game. Actually, more like the last 3 minutes of the game. Never be confused by that. Be able to come back to some moment, like at this 18-minute mark, where Urk is very clearly ahead, and try to find out when the lead slipped. That's what we want to do. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking a brief break, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at another game, keep this idea of multitasking in, so we have some more examples of what you should submit for next week, and also how to identify the biggest problems and deal with them first. So, whatever you do, do not go anywhere. It's going to be Day 9, Day 340, part number 2, coming up in a moment, not part number 3, which I always say incorrectly because I'm awesome. We will be back in just a moment, and you are all very beautiful.